morning, good morning. Today we are talking about power and the bands of perception. And a great meditation technique to kind of help us get into this concept of bands of perception is the Little Buddha, Big Buddha meditation that I love so much. So we'll start today with this meditation, and we'll use some zazen music as our background, just so when different sounds arise, you don't have to let your brain try and identify all the different noises. You just say it's just part of the music, and you're able to come back to the visualization. For this meditation, we will visualize a little Buddha in the heart, a little baby Buddha. And it could be a female Buddha or a male Buddha or a pair, male and female together Buddha. Whatever works for you today, imagine this little Buddha in your heart as clearly as you can. And when you have that visualization in mind and it seems a little stable, then allow that Buddha to expand and grow and grow and grow and grow until it's so large that you, in your current position, are sitting in the heart of the Buddha. And then allow that image to stabilize in your mind. And then let the Buddha shrink all the way back down until it's back in your heart. And you can go as fast or as slow as is comfortable, but the idea is to allow your perception to shrink down so you can feel your own body with the Buddha in your heart, and then allowing the Buddha to grow so large that you are in the heart of the Buddha, and just keep moving back and forth. So that makes sense. So let's try that. Put some music on. And we always bow for just a moment. So power and the bands of perception. We are infinite. But because we've been conditioned, we believe that we are limited to this finite form. But really, we're infinite. We started talking about power last week, and that was an important teaching about the concept of self-worth. So if you missed that, please go back and review, because without that understanding that everyone has intrinsic self-worth, the teachings of power can be confusing or even twisted into an abusive way. So it's important teaching. So having given that warning, let's talk about the bands of perception. You know, power in its most basic definition is the ability to perceive. My physics friends tell me that when we observe something, anything, it changes. So just by the act of perception, of observing something, there's an interaction in this relative world, and that which is being perceived is affected by our perception. I got to watch my teacher do this by the way he would hold different people in his mind. He had a very powerful mind, very strong ability to perceive. And go into a restaurant, and the server would come over and take our order, and at the beginning of the meal, they would start in one level of consciousness, you know, maybe that feeling of struggle and maybe not quite really wanting to be at work, but they still wanted to do a good job. And my teacher would notice that, and then he would hold them in his mind in this luminous way. And by the end of the meal, the server would have a big smile on their face. They would seem lighter and happier. So I got to watch this happen. But you could say, well, she just happened to, he or she just happened to enjoy the interaction. But let's kind of unpack what is actually going on. And I need you to understand that it wasn't his unique power. This is power you have. This is something that we all do to each other. But maybe let me back up a little bit. So, a way of talking about power and perception is to call it these bands of perception. You can say there's like a radio has the FM band, the AM band, shortwave. There's a human band of perception. There is a plant band of perception. There is an animal, a cat band of perception. Cats perceive in a certain way, dogs perceive in another way. Rocks have a band of perception. Everything in existence has consciousness. Even the chairs that you're sitting on are conscious. And within that consciousness is an awareness that contains a band of perception. Now, that doesn't mean that it's easy to understand or for us to perceive what the chair that we're sitting on is perceiving. But as humans, we have this wide range of different sub-bands of perception. There are very logical bands of perception, where we like everything very orderly and clean, and to be very rational, and to see that, okay, A plus B equals C, and it's all very neat that way. Then there is emotional bands of perception, where we might have a whole range of different flavors of anger. We might have a whole different range of different types of pleasure. So all of these are different ways of perceiving. And then we can get into other life forms, like trees. Like, I'm very connected to trees. So when I walk by a tree, it's like I feel their band of perception. So I can, if I quiet my mind and enter into that field, I can perceive as a tree. You can too. It just takes some practice. It takes some play. But where we're conditioned is most humans have this very narrow field of power, a very narrow menu, if you will, of perception. There is the, just looking at our current society, there's the band of perception that pushes out life is hard and it's struggle, and you just basically work and pay taxes and die. You've all heard that before, right? That seems to be a very popular band for people to live in. And it's, because of how the different structures interplay with each other. In some ways, that's by design. There's also a band of perception that is all about the game of King of the Hill. Like, who's going to be, King of the Hill. So it's all about competition and winning and being the best and having the most. And all of the other bands of perception kind of get pushed away, where it's only that. And we can see lots of examples that I won't name in the world of people that live in that very narrow band of perception. And there's really not much joy in there. There's not room for it, because all it is either I'm a winner or I'm a loser. It's very binary. Either you're helping me or you're hurting me. And it's very similar to the struggle band, but the struggle band has a little more room for simple pleasures, a little more room for play, where life isn't quite so serious, but it is serious because we got to struggle, and that's what's on the menu. But when we start to study power, when we start to actually look at the structures holding our perception in place, which is where meditation comes in, because when we sit and silence our mind, these structures that we've been conditioned to believe that's the way it is. This is how it's always been. This is just how it is. In meditation, in that silence, if we actually go into inner stillness, those structures start to melt, they start to waver, and they actually start to fall away. And we might have moments of insight. We might have moments where that innate joy bubbles up. And we're like, oh, this is new. I haven't had this before. And then we get up from our meditation and we enter back into relation with the world. And what happens is the structures collapse back upon us. Unless we practice mindfulness. Unless we start to observe how our mind is perceiving. Because remember, when we observe something, it changes. Suddenly we start to see that, oh, these structures aren't really solid. There's actually some wiggle room. It's like maybe I've been in the struggle band forever, and then now I'm seeing, oh, I could jump over to the King of the Hill band if I wanted to. But those people don't look so happy. It looks like a lot of, different type of struggle. But what else is there? And you start to notice that, oh, there's this whole range of emotional bands. But if I only live in pure emotion, then that can get exhausting. If I live only in the rational bands, oh, that can get very dry, and you start to feel disconnected. So as we kind of rotate through these different bands of perception, and we might even start to notice the bands that aren't human, like the tree band. I love the tree band. Or other plants, or animals. We might really connect with those bands of perception, and we start to feel into them. And we observe how that level of perception starts to affect us. Now, this is where our study of power kind of goes to another level. Because it's one thing to just notice things. It's another to be able to take that information that you've learned, those awarenesses, and pull them into your current physical being and actually play with them, actually use them. And when you do that, this is where it gets really tricky. Because everyone has this conditioned baseline of band of perception. That's our comfort zone. This is how we have decided this is how the world is. This is how it works. I'm very comfortable with it. So we might reach into these other bands of perception and pull back some information and then be able to utilize them. Like the tree band is very expansive and patient. It grows. It goes through cycles of growth and rest. And it's very slow compared to other bands of perception. So we can take that band of perception and pull it into our being and use it to nourish and to slow down our nervous system and create this sense of support that might be missing. But what tends to happen if we're not careful, we take it and we twist it to fit into the band that we're most comfortable in. So if we're living in the struggle zone, then we'll take this information that the trees are teaching us, that we're observing and pulling that power of tree into us, And then we'll use it in this very tiny way of just, okay, I'm going to use this to support my perception of struggle. Or I'm going to use this to support my perception of being the king of the mountain. But there's another option. And that is to break all the bands of perception. And this is terrifying for the ego. It's absolutely terrifying. Because we still need to use the bands of perception in order to relate to the world. But instead of being bound to them, instead of being bound to a particular band of perception, we can learn to kind of surf in between all of them. And in that way, we start to connect with the energetic center of our being and of all of existence. We start to connect with the Dharmakaya, the pure light that flows through us. And in our play, in our surfing amongst all the different bands of perception, we find that we can utilize them for the benefit of ourselves and others. Now, why would we do that? Why go through all that work? Sounds like an awful lot of work. What am I going to get out of it? That's the king of the hill perception. Saying, I need to win. What's the exchange? What's my return on investment for this activity? And it's just fun. The same reason that we do selfless giving. We don't do it to get anything back. We do it because it feels good, because it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's play. So this discussion of power has a tendency among humans to get very, very heavy, serious, because your mind goes immediately to how can I profit from this? How is this going to make my struggle less? How is this going to make me win and be at the top of the mountain? Because those are the options that have been given to you on the menu. But what I'm suggesting to you is there's so much more. So much more. More than you can possibly imagine. Now, as we play with the different bands of perception, that doesn't mean that we disconnect from our physical reality. That's just psychosis. That doesn't help anything. That just is another dream. But when you start to dance along all these different bands of perception, you find freedom in every moment. And then as you come back and ground into your physical body, there becomes this ability to observe and notice what is needed in this moment for the highest, brightest benefit of all beings. So this concept of bodhicitta, of the sincere wish for the liberation of all beings, is our anchor as we play with power. Because otherwise, like I said, it's easy to get lost. This is the danger of the path of power, of mysticism, of occultism, is going off the rails and becoming completely psychotic. It can happen. doesn't have to. So we remain grounded in our meditation practice, in our mindfulness practice of watching our mind, in our contemplation, as we're exploring how our mind works, and as we explore the highest truths that we can access at our current level of perception. The more that we dance along the different bands of perception, the easier it is to grasp the truths that lie beyond words. As I said, everything has consciousness. There is our human band of consciousness, there's plants and animals and objects, rocks and water, and even the planet itself. This is one of the reasons why we celebrate the solstices and the equinoxes, because it's allowing us to tune into the band of perception of the planet as a whole. We feel into the solstice energy to tap into the power of the planet, which means that we can actually perceive the entire planet as one organism, as one living, breathing, moving organism. And our little human body is just this tiny dust mote in this vast forest of awareness. And then we can even expand our perception even further and connect with a star, the consciousness of a star, and just feel our entire being burning with light, shining the pure Dharmakaya. No thought of reward, no thought of getting anywhere, just for the pure joy of shining. That's all within your mind right now. But most people live, like I said, in those little tiny bands of perception. And they will swear up and down that that is all that exists. And it's ridiculous. So having a sense of humor about the whole thing is essential, especially with yourself, because what will happen is you'll go dancing among all these different bands of perception, and then you'll come back and be grounded in your body and find yourself stuck in your comfort zone. And your self-importance will come up and tell you that this is how it is, this is how it's always been, this is what's important, this is what's real. And it will start to build those structures around your mind and that will kind of create this cage that holds your vision, your ability to observe in this very narrow band. And you'll take it very, very seriously. Unless you have a really good sense of humor and you can start poking fun at yourself and say, oh, look at this pretty little cage my mind designed for me. And sometimes that little cage is helpful. You might have to go in and have an interaction with somebody who has built their own little cage, and they have fortified it, and they have no interest in exploring anything beyond that cage. But if you temporarily create a little matching cage, you can have an interaction with them. And maybe, just maybe, perhaps not, but maybe, a little bit of the light that is shining through you as you're bringing back that consciousness of being a star seeps into their consciousness, and they might observe something. And this is predicated upon how you hold them in your mind. This is our gift that we can offer to others. And it is incredibly powerful. Because every time we encounter somebody, it's for the first time. We think we know other people. We think we know ourselves. We have a fixed idea. This is who I am. This is how I am. This is who you are. And I pull out my little image. This is what you look like, and this is how you act, and this is what you believe. And we hold that in our mind. And we project that onto other people through our and our power of observation that changes that which we are observing, transforms that person into that. So test this out the next time you have to interact with somebody you've had a problematic relationship with. Now, this is a big test, so baby steps. Maybe start with somebody that just makes you slightly uncomfortable. See if you can challenge yourself to allow them to be completely unknown to you, to be a complete mystery when you encounter them. And really check your mind and say, okay, which band of perception am I in right now? And ground myself in bodhicitta. And now I'm going to have this interaction with this person who in the back of my mind I think I know, but I'm going to play this game and say, you know what? That may or may not be true. I really don't know who this person is. And then allow yourself to observe them as if you're meeting them for the first time. And see what they actually are like today. And hold them, as we should everyone, as if they are a manifestation of Buddha nature. Because they are. Everyone is a manifestation of Buddha nature. They are all the Nirmanakaya. Every person you meet is a Buddha. Now, you have to play with your perception of what is a Buddha. And throw that out. Because you can't really know. Buddhas are infinite. But as you interact with this person, you start with that as the base of they are an emanation of Buddha. And I know nothing. And then I'll see how the interaction unfolds. It can be very fascinating because sometimes it might be somebody that you've always had friction with. There's always been that, twisty, uncomfortableness, or sometimes outright hostility. But then you come and you project only that image of purity and complete curiosity of unknowing of, oh, who are you? How may I be of service? And notice how the interaction unfolds. It might turn out that, in that moment they're in the band of perception of being a complete jerk. But as you dance with that, there's not all the weight of history and story behind it. And they might completely surprise you, and you might realize, like, wow, they're actually a very sweet person. They have views that don't mesh with my own, but they seem to enjoy them. And again, you don't have that heavy history to live up to. So this is one of the benefits of learning how to dance along the bands of perception. And as we continue through our series on power, we'll talk more about this. But I wanted to just really today introduce you to this concept that you are infinite, that everything is within your mind, and you don't have to live within the menu of what has been shown to you. And when you feel the pressure of somebody else's observation on you, you don't have to step into that box. But again, we'll talk more about that another time, maybe next week, or 2 weeks, because we have a break next week. But next time, perhaps we'll talk more about that aspect of power. But for now, really contemplate and look at what bands of perception you're holding in your mind. And let's meditate. We'll do the chakra meditation. So we'll start on the navel center, and then move up to the heart, and then to the third eye. So let's find some music.
on the other side of this life, there's enlightenment. It stretches on forever. Past thousands and millions of stars and suns. Into eternity. Be optimistic, always be positive. Because beyond this transient surface of pleasure and pain, there is endless ecstasy. You can't understand life. You can convince yourself that you have. What you can do is be empty of thoughts and hatreds and violence, so that the clear light of perfect enlightenment can fill you to the brim.
And we always bow for a moment. So I know that was a lot. A lot of heady stuff. So don't take it too seriously. Don't let it turn into something that it's not. Realize that you are so much more than you can conceive. That when you feel trapped by a certain view, recognize that you can actually move your mind into a different band of perception and completely change your experience. You have that power. One way that we can play with that is through the different organs of perception. So our sight, our hearing, our taste, our smell, our touch, our feeling through our energy body. So when you want to just play, or when you feel like you're stuck, and your structures are feeling very heavy on you, what you can do is just kind of cycle through the different senses and notice what you're observing, and notice how you change as you connect with that observation. Like sometimes there might be a sound that you immediately don't want there. But if you allow yourself to move into that band of perception, of sound, of vibration, of the element of space, now you've suddenly moved into this beautiful spaciousness, even though there's that sound that you initially didn't want, and maybe it's still an unpleasant sound. But as you dive in deeper, you start to notice there's a lot more than you initially thought. And this is true with all of the different doorways of the senses. So play with that, and then, as I said, next time we'll go a little deeper, talk a little more.